So today's video, I want to talk about how we healed schizophrenia in 90 days. So the story starts that I had a dear loved one who had a nervous breakdown. He was in another state at the time, and he started repeating over and over again, stop, fast forward, rewind, stop, fast forward, rewind, and wasn't making any other coherent sentences other than that. So another family member brought him to the hospital, immediately put him on some medication for mental illness, and that started his rapid decline from there, which we know now that the psychotic medications can cause or even exacerbate symptoms that they're promising to alleviate. And so it really just made the situation worse. From there, he was put into several different mental hospitals, and he would call me from these places and just beg for help and please help. I don't want to be here. I know something's wrong, but I can't think and I can't function, and I don't know how to get out of this. And he was genuinely terrified, and he also reported a lot of abuse happening in these mental hospitals. He said that he was getting peed on, that he was getting beat, that they were forcing all of the patients to watch these videos of gorillas and monkeys abusing each other. And when he called and told me these things, I just thought, well, you're crazy, and so I don't know if I can believe you, and I don't know how to help you. And so that was just really heart-wrenching and hard. Later they released him, and he ended up being homeless on the streets for several months. All of us just completely at a loss of what to do. Me and my ex-husband at the time felt like this was really wrong and not okay for him to be just left on the streets. And I had very little training at the time of to be a master herbalist through Dr. Christopher's master herbology program, and so I took it on myself and thought, okay, well, I can help him do the incurables program, and then he'll heal. And boy, was I wrong. He, not because herbs don't work or because the program's faulty, he just simply couldn't focus to follow through on any of the steps that I asked him to do. So that didn't work. So we took him into my home. I was pregnant with baby number 2, and it was so heavy to have him at the house. His energy was just made your skin crawl with tension and tightness, and he had a downstairs entrance where he could come into my home. And even if I didn't hear him come in, I could feel him come in. My whole body would retract and just like, oh, I don't want to be dealing with this. He did a lot of rocking, and he took up smoking. He'd never been a smoker his whole life, and now all of a sudden he was a chain smoker, smoking like 2 packs a day, eating just whatever junk food he could find. And he wasn't a threat to us or other people, but he did have a lot of suicidal ideation, so he was dealing with a lot of demonic attacks and just really terrible mental thoughts that way. And he would plead with me and ask for help a lot of the times and be like, please, I'm fighting with the devil, and he's telling me to go unalive myself or to go walk off into the desert and never come back and do all these terrible things. At one point, he went into my neighbor's garage and tried to steal their gun so he could unalive himself, and my neighbor caught him, thankfully, and of course was alarmed and probably terrified for the safety of his family, and didn't understand what this full-grown crazy man's doing in his garage. So he brought him back to us and told us about it, and we were just completely at a loss of what do you do? How do you babysit a full-grown 200?
Okay, sorry about that. My memory got full and none of that video got recorded, so we're here another day. trying to finish this video. So we had left off where he had tried to sneak into the neighbor's house, and we still his gun, and we were just completely at a loss of what do we do now. And so then what happened, we took him to a actual mental hospital and tried to get him some help that way, and they turned us away. And we were just floored. We were like, this is what you guys do for a living. This is what your business is. You take in people who are mentally unstable and you help them get stabilized and get well. Well, maybe not him, but you help them to get stabilized. And they didn't tell us why. They just turned us away. And once again, we were just like, oh my gosh, what do we do with a crazy person that the mental hospital won't even take in? And so at that point, I was 8 months pregnant, and I just knew I had nothing left to give to the situation. If I'm sweating, it's because it's crazy hot out here. And so I made a hard decision to kick him out of my house and just let him be homeless, because I just knew I needed to get this baby here and keep this baby safe and get my house ready and get my body ready for this birth. So I kicked him out on the streets, and another family member that was living with me at the time brought him back in the very next day. So he was still there, and I had no energy to fight them on that, and so I just let it be. Like, okay, if you're gonna caretake him and oversee that, then so be it. But I've got all my focus into this pregnancy right now. And so then, when I was 9 months along, on my due date, I went to my midwife, and there was no heartbeat. And at this point, it was like, no, something's wrong with her machine, and she sent me to the hospital to get it verified through an ultrasound. And so me and my mom went and got this ultrasound, and it was the same verdict, that there was no heartbeat, and that I would have to give birth to an unalive baby. And at this point, I just went into hardcore denial, and I was like, no way, there's no way, the machine has to be wrong. Miracles happen all the time. I'm gonna give birth to a live, breathing baby. And I just anchored down into that denial so hard. So I went home. I took several bottles of false unicorn herb to get the labor started, since I was due. And it only works if the baby's not well. If the baby's well, it won't start labor. Several family members called me at this point and just begged me, and like, please just get the DNC. And if you don't know what a DNC is, they go in and pry open your cervix and pull the baby out limb from limb and crush the skull and pull it out. It's a very horrible procedure, and your baby's in pieces after that. I understand that in some cases that's necessary, but I believe in natural processes, and that the birthing is one of the most natural processes that we have, and that it doesn't need to be a medical intervention. I understand that it can turn into a need for a medical intervention, but in this case, I felt confident that my body's wisdom still knew how to birth a baby, even if that baby wasn't alive. I went ahead with the birth. I've given birth to all of my babies at home. We had to birth this baby at the hospital. It was the easiest birth out of all of my births. I breathed this baby out and was so calm through every contraction. I was able to just breathe and do a very hypnobirth type birth, but emotionally it was the hardest birth, as I'm sure you can imagine, to stay focused in my denial that this baby is in fact coming out alive. When she came out, the doctor dropped her into a bucket that they had sitting there, and my husband was holding me up at the time, otherwise he said he would have punched him in the face. So my baby arrived, and she was unalive, and she was so beautiful. Her cheeks were still rosy, and her lips were still red. And she was a beautiful little girl. And it just shattered me to the core of everything that I am. So when I got home, I just locked myself in my room, and I didn't come out for a month. I hardly ate anything, and I just let myself grieve and bawl and feel all of the pain of a loss that great. And I just couldn't wrap my head around it, and I kept asking God why. I'm a good mother. I took care of my body. I ate salads and I went on walks and I took all of my prenatals, and I felt very upset with God because I couldn't see any why. I couldn't see anything that I did wrong to cause that, and why this would happen to me. So we went ahead and got the autopsy, and the doctors couldn't find anything wrong with her either. And so during this time that I was locked in my room, that started my spiritual awakening, and I started to be able to get downloads from source, for lack of a better word, and feel held spiritually like I've never felt that thinning of the veil so strong in my life. I could feel her hugging me all the time. And she would like comb her fingers through my hair and try to tell me everything is going to be okay. So we're on a spiritual awakening in a different video. But during this time that I was locked in my room, my loved one who was dealing with schizophrenia, he spontaneously had a crown fall off of his tooth, pop off. It popped off his tooth. And immediately afterwards, he told me that he was a lot more clear-headed, and he could start to follow through with what we were asking him to do a little bit better. So they took him also during this time that I was in my room to get some medication to help him focus better. And he looked kind of still not there in his eyes, but he could focus better. And they also found somebody that does foot zoning that was willing to work with him at this point. Every natural healer that we talked to wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. And so it was pretty miraculous in itself to find a healer that would take him on. And she said, come to me once a week for 3 months and feed him raw food, and in 3 months he'll be healed. So they told me this after a month of my grieving, and I was just still so much in my pain and so shattered from what had happened. I just had no hope. And I still cared about this person, and I wanted him to be well. I just had nothing to give. I had already been a raw fooder at that point for 3 years. So I agreed to go ahead and make him the food and help him get to these appointments. So you that don't know, foot zoning is a technique that is somewhat similar to reflexology, but 10 times more powerful. So you're working with the hologram of the body on the foot, but they do it in a way that's sequenced, and so it has patterns and structure, and it helps things flow and drain in the proper ways and clean every cell of the body. So we started taking him to this gal, and in a month, he did notice a difference, and he was calmer and less rocking and squirrely kind of energy, like less darty and all that kind of stuff. And at that point, I started to have a little bit of hope for this treatment. So we kept taking him, and that was really super important that she told us to keep coming back for 3 months, because otherwise we didn't have enough money to do these treatments. We would have given up if she wouldn't have told us, like, you need at least 3 months of this to see results. We also started feeding him dandelion shakes in the mornings, and he also started sun gazing, which he said, I don't know what it's doing, but I feel a difference when I do it, and so I'm going to keep doing it. And now that I know more about sunlight therapy, and especially like Jack Cruz's work, it makes a lot more sense why this was a beneficial part to the treatment. So he was eating the raw food, doing the dandelion greens, and sun gazing, as well as the foot zoning. And within 3 months, he was no longer hearing voices, no longer having battles with demons and devils, and no longer having hallucinations of things that were not there. And so we classify that as his schizophrenia being gone at that point. However, he, and we could see him in his eyes. If you've ever dealt with crazy, you might know what I'm talking about. We could see the real him. And at this point, he was still very shaken and even traumatized from what he went through. So even though he wasn't hearing the voices, and he was stable and calm, and we could be around him comfortably, and it was peaceful to be around him, and we even enjoyed being around him at this point, he still didn't have a drive to go back to work and provide for his family, and he still had to work through all of the emotional processing and process what he experienced, because he essentially, on a spiritual level, vibrationally, like, he walked through hell. It is the vibration of hell when you're crazy. It's a really horrid experience. And so it took him another 8 months to work through all of that stuff, as well as he chose to get off his medication. The doctors told him not to. They advised against it, and they said, this is the only thing. They said, there's no cure for schizophrenia, and you're just going to have to maintain your disease through medication. And he found a book that was called, I want to say, Your Medication is Your Problem. I'll link it in the description box below. It was a doctor that wrote this book, and he's talked about how your drugs, or the medical drugs, especially dealing with psychosis, cause the symptoms that they say that they're trying to heal. And a lot of those things are suicidal ideation and suicidal depression, and just a lot of terrible side effects. So he, little by little, and I'm not recommending anybody doing this, I'm just sharing what he chose to do on his journey. He felt like this was important for him to do, so he weaned himself off, and he sliced the tiniest ever. Like, he was so meticulous about just getting this most little sliver off of this pill that he could, to wean himself off of the medication. And once he did, we did see a big uptick in his drive and motivation and willingness to engage and assert himself in the world again. So by 8 months, he had worked through all of that emotional stuff and got himself weaned off of the medical drugs. He was able to go back to work and provide for his family. Now, even though that was brutally hard to walk through with him, I'm so grateful to have him back. He's such a key person in my life. He's such an invaluable relationship in my life. So wonderful to have him back, and I'm so grateful it worked, and that he's well, and that we get to have him be a part of our. I just wanted to share this if it could be helpful to anyone. We're not trying to tell anybody what to do, how to live their lives. what to do with a crazy person in their life. We just wanted to share our story.
My name is Laura Kunz, and I started this channel to help women to go from a vibration of pain and emotional suffering and hardship into sustainable pleasure, joy, vitality, peace, love, connection. Emotions are challenging. We can do this together. You've got team and you've got support. We've also got tribe going on our school platform. The link will be below. We can't wait to see you there. Thanks for joining us.